Humans hate doing work alone. It's a survival instinct instilled over 10,000 years of human history. Evolution has spoken. Organizing in human tribes just works. Yet between 2019 and 2021, the number of people working from home in their bedrooms, in their living rooms, went from 9 million to almost 28 million people. Nearly 16% of companies globally are now fully remote. So what gives? Does our physical presence at work really matter to our survival? The professional knowledge worker has seen more than their fair share of transformation. There are over 100 million knowledge workers in the US, representing 60% of the US labor force, and over 1 billion globally. These workers have seen recurring waves of change, from the opening of the labor pool to include female workers, to computers, to the digital economy. Across each of these stages, our impulse to perform work physically together was always constant. Until now. Some of us may remember a time not so long ago that we actually inhabited rooms like these. We huddled inside of them and created ideas together. In fact, we were so fond of them, we gave them special names. We called them Fishbowls. A fishbowl can mean many things. In most of its uses and connotations, a duality of presence exists, as does a sort of confinement and a boundaried loneliness. It's really no surprise, then, that the word has had a coming of age during the last 3 years. I've spent a good portion of my career, just short of a decade, analyzing the way professionals construct digital groups to communicate within their own fishbowls. During that time, I developed a social application, also called Fishbowl, in use by millions of professionals to communicate semi-anonymously across companies and ranks. I learned a lot, but perhaps most importantly, I learned to distinguish between the relationships people profess to have with their professional colleagues and the relationships they actually have. The stories and conversations on the Fishbowl platform previewed for me the change coming into the workplace. And I, just like any other lonely worker, lived through that change too. Looking back at these office pictures now, they feel like a relic of a bygone era, like a museum piece. But it's only been 3 years since our Fishbowl exodus, since we left our offices. And thankfully, we did survive. We adapted. We found new tools and environments to get our work done. And now, our new Fishbowls look something like this. Or perhaps more accurately, this. Sometimes this, and for me at least, on a daily basis, this. Okay, I have to admit, I don't know what the limit of participants in a Zoom meeting is, but I just know that's way too many people. I also know that at my company, when a new employee is hired, like clockwork, they magically pop up in this 10 by 10 box. And I'm forced to try to introduce myself awkwardly in front of 200 pixelated coworkers. Of course, I bomb. So I resort to pinging them in Slack with a message, a friendly message, like, hey, let's grab a digital coffee. I still don't know what a digital coffee means, and we've never actually drank coffee in all the meetings we've ever had. I try to break the ice in the best way I can in this new remote world. So I browse around and look for a suitable digital wallpaper to use as my background, a very professional one. I kind of just miss going out and grabbing a coffee with my new employee in person, or inviting them to my pimped out work cube. The concept of the work cube is also something of the past. The presentation of ourselves at work has gone from this or this, evolving to something like this. With all of these reconstitutions of our fishbowls, there's a common unifying thread. Humans just hate working alone. When it comes to our survival, say hunting or building PowerPoint decks, we always find ways to collaborate. And in the process, we always find ways to escape our loneliness. I've had a front row seat at what the renowned strategy consulting firm McKinsey has called the Great Acceleration. To be sure, remote work existed before the pandemic. But what we've witnessed these last 3 years is a trend in hyperdrive. The impact on professionals has been profound and emotional. Millions of conversations like this one, shared on the Fishbowl platform, deal with the issues they're now discovering in this remote world, caused by the dislocation of where we work. One of the more common themes discussed on the platform involves our newly forged relationships with our work cameras. We've gotten so comfortable with them, we've even coined terms like Zoom fatigue. But when a manager starts mandating that cameras be turned on throughout the duration of a workday, we have to ask ourselves, when does corporate accountability become corporate surveillance? Of course, the traditional media has ignored these human stories, instead focusing monolithically on employers and employees. On one side, employers clamor about the loss of productivity. Depends on the CEO you ask, of course. And on the other side, employees rave about the benefits of work-life balance. Of course, we know that's just code word for killing off one of the most frustrating, hated daily work rituals of all time. Lost in the conversation, however, are the human relationships literally at work. Corporations have long relied on modern innovations like HR to manage these relationships and to try to quell disorder within their ranks. But our corporate conventions are being tested now more than ever. There's a sort of generational divide brewing within our newly formed fishbowls that are pushing the limits of trust within corporations and wherever human tribes exist to work. Approximately 2 million bachelor degree college grads enter the workforce every year. Their proper initiation into the world of work is consequential to our future economy, hugely consequential. Things like GDP and economic innovation depend on it. So it turns out the working relationship between a 55-year-old boomer manager and a 22-year-old Gen Z junior is actually quite important in the larger picture. How does an entry-level associate, earn trust at the job when their manager thinks they're coddled and fragile, part of a self-entitled generation, unaccustomed to do, quote, hardcore work? Similarly, how does the manager guide and inspire the junior associate when the junior thinks that meritocracy is a sham and that the manager's own company loyalty is fueled only by his or her financial privilege? The truth is, behind all these funny memes or not so funny stereotypes is a seismic shift in the way humans are now organizing to do work. Absent all of our rituals, in-person employee orientations, run-in with managers at work events, bumping into hallway conversations during a bathroom break, All of our attempts to build bonds with other humans at work are rendered choreographed conversations on Zoom. How do we engender empathy between conflicting generations in a workforce? And how does trust develop in the presence of a physical vacuum? At the onset of the pandemic, with work from home in full effect, it became apparent just how much professionals were trying to fill in the social void left at work. The chart represents the growth in conversations on the platform from February 2020 to May 2020. In response, we decided to analyze the conversations we were seeing and try to understand the sentiment and topics. There were new groups emerging, like this one, the WorkLife Bowl, with almost 2 million professionals joining. What we witnessed was a dramatic change in the conversation on the network. The more typical transactional questions like, what's the salary like at this job? What are the benefits like? We're giving away to distinctly more personal and social discussions. Professionals were now seeking answers to questions about how to do their work in this remote environment. Of course, not all has changed. In fact, the upshot is that several studies are now claiming productivity is higher for remote workers. It appears that the transactional parts of our jobs, filling in timesheets, filling out performance reviews, emailing project updates, all of these are new Fishbowls handle these very well. We have ample personal time to give to them now. The cost of our new Fishbowls is far more in plain sight. We find ourselves lonely at work yet again. This time around, some of us are questioning whether a return to office is necessary for human collaboration, and by consequence, maybe even our collective survival. And some companies are even re-envisioning or versioning new Fishbowls based on old Fishbowls to recover some of what they miss or think what we need. We'll see soon enough how far that gets us. In the meanwhile, we'll take that extra time with our loved ones, avoid the morning commutes, and have our desks waiting for us in our absence. And until the time comes where we understand whether our Fishbowls will be something of the past or a new form that will take shape. If it turns out to be the latter, I can confidently say that the challenges waiting for us are unprecedented. But if history has taught us anything, it's that humans are resilient survivors. Thank you.